This week on the Fair Dinkum Department, we're not even doing an intro. We're clearly talking shellackings. There has been some all-timers over the weekend. Guess what? Outrage. There's plenty of it. We're going to decide if it's real or ridiculous. I'm Chris Danks. You're Liam O'Loughlin. We are the Fair Dinkum Department. Let's put aside the Dragons Shark stuff. We can come to that in a bit. What was your game with a round, my friend?
There wasn't a hell of a lot to choose from, if we're being fair dinkum. Roosters Manly. I was watching that at the Chloe Hotel yesterday. Nice tight game, back and forth. The lead changed plenty of times, so that's usually a good indication of a good game of footy. Roosters obviously down on troops, but did well to hang in there for most of the game. So that was probably my best of a bad bunch.
Yeah, I'm 100%. I actually drove past Brookie. I was listening to on the radio. I drove past Brookie in the 79th minute by pure chance. And you could hear the crowd going mental. It actually seemed like a pretty great atmosphere. Had it been any other game, any other rounds, probably wouldn't have cared that much. But as you said, it was a week of blowouts, so there's not much to chat about. Except the West Tigers. Golly gosh, do they suck again. And that hurts to say. I have a very soft spot for the Tigers, but 74-0 loss on the weekend. They had no Brooksy, they had no Coruscant. Is this still year one of the 5-year plan for Sheens and Benji?
Yeah. This is the first year Sheens has been back as coach anyway.
There's been chatter, as there always will be, but from Buzz, who seems to have a pretty good idea of what's happening in footy land, despite what others may think of him. He's saying Sheens should be out. He hasn't coached in too long. He thinks he should be done. What do you reckon?
I found it a strange appointment when it did happen. The whole 5-year plan, I suppose, on paper sounds really good, and it's giving the club and their fans optimism long term. It's not a short term fix, but I just thought for a guy, I know Tim Sheens is a fantastic coach, and he's won a premiership at the Tigers, and there's that romance about him coming back alongside Benji, but he hasn't coached in the NRL for a long time. The game has changed a lot since Sheens last coached in the NRL. They recruited reasonably well, I thought, in the off season, landing guys like Coruscant, John Bateman, Isaiah Papali'i, obviously the big three that they were able to get across, and I thought they would improve, but to be honest, proof's in the pudding on Saturday night. They've, if anything, regressed. So I don't think he was the right man for the job. Who was? I don't know. We have this discussion every time someone's job is up for grabs in the coaching world. Shane Flanagan was out there for quite a long time and available to come into a head coaching role, and he didn't land a job until just recently with the Dragons. Desi was still at Manly last year when West Tigers parted ways with Michael Maguire. So there wasn't heaps out there, and obviously they missed Serraldo, but I just don't think Tim Sheens was the right choice, and they're looking awful at the moment. The Tigers, you really got to feel for their fan base.
I really do, and it's tough watching them just as a filthy casual fan for the West Tigers. I have no idea where their points come from, but also I have no idea where their effort comes from, and that seems like a very harsh thing. It's probably completely inaccurate. I'm sure that they try their butts off every single week, but they just look so outclassed and so uninterested. Every single week, it's a really tough watch, and I wonder if finally this win will put a little bit more microscope maybe on people a little bit higher than the head coach, like perhaps at board level, if that does actually have any influence or not. Justin Pascoe is obviously a lightning rod for this type of stuff, but if there would be any change that maybe doesn't involve on-field management.
Yeah, obviously Justin Pascoe, he cops a lot of criticism, and Lee Hadjibentelis, the chairman of the club, he's always out there doing interviews and giving statements. He's very public in that respect. He's always out there fronting.
Wears a lot of nice hats.
He does. He loves a hat, doesn't he, Lee? But I mean, the on-field results can only be put so much back towards those guys. but I guess the on-field results are a reflection of who they've appointed as the coach and the high performance staff, and who Justin Pascoe has had a hand in recruiting. So I don't think recruitment, I suppose, heading into this season was an issue, but in years gone by, Justin Pascoe has been there, and they've messed up a few things. Obviously now they've lost Luke Brooks. We touched on it last week or the week before that they don't really have a clear direction in the halves for next season, and obviously they let Hastings go at the end of last year. So they've bungled a few things, and the coaching is probably one of them. So I don't know where they go. Putting Benji into the top job next year seems very premature. So I don't know. I really don't know where they go, because another year plus of Tim Sheens seems like a disaster waiting to happen. But hopefully they can turn things around.
Okay, so I guess the big question for us: should the Tigers sack Tim Sheens? Real? Ridiculous?
I'm happy to wait till the end of the season, so I'm going to say right now ridiculous. Obviously they were awful on Saturday night, and that's only going to put a magnifying glass on his job. But considering they've got a plan in place, it might not be working right now, but they do have a plan in place in terms of the head coaching role with Benji to take over in 2025. I just think it'd be way too premature for Benj to come into that role next year, especially when he's the assistant coach and they're going shithouse at the moment. I don't know why anyone would think that's going to change too much. So for now, ridiculous. At the end of the season, have a look what's out there, who's out there, and wait and see.
100% back that. In happier news, the Cowboys, have they possibly even bounced into premiership contention? I don't know. But a 74 blot win on the weekend, massive turnaround from 6 weeks ago. Really poor start to the season, especially when you consider the cattle they have. But definitely playing players finding their form, players coming back from injury. Just off the top of the bat, did you see this coming in any possible way? Maybe not 74-0, but a return to form?
I did think that after the Tigers lost 6 weeks ago, and the Tigers put 66 points on the Cowboys, I thought, geez, it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle now for Todd Payten. They do have a strong roster, but there are a lot of questions being asked. But since then, they really have turned things around. They had a really good win a number of weeks ago against the Storm, which caught my eye. And obviously Saturday night. I know it's the Tigers, but still 74 points doesn't happen very often, if at all, these days in the NRL. So they found their form. They've got pretty much close to their full contingent back out there now. If they can get through this last Origin game unscathed, get Helam Lukey back towards the end of the year, scrape into possibly the top four. I know they're sitting ninth at the moment, but they have 2 byes in hand, and we know how condensed it is. They're only 4 points off fourth at the moment. So if they can keep this kind of form up and scrape into the top four, get that second chance in the finals, they're a genuine shot in my book.
Did you hear what Gus said about them being probably the best chance to topple the Panthers?
I certainly did, and he's been saying that for a couple of weeks now as well. I think since the Storm game, he said they can win the comp, and he believes out of all the teams, including like Broncos and South Sydney, he thinks the Cowboys, if they make the finals and keep this run up, they can beat the Panthers. I don't disagree with him, to be honest.
I would like it to happen just so we can finally kick this, getting 50 put against you automatically rules you out of the premiership, which, it does. But I don't see it. I don't see it. So I think we're repeating ourselves pretty much, but the Cowboys, real or ridiculous, genuine premiership threat, considering they're right now ninth, but they have a few tricks up their sleeve left.
Very real. Very, very real. I'm a big fan of the Cowboys and how they've been playing recently, the squad that they've got. I liked them at the start of the season, and I still like them now. Scotty Drinkwater's in great form. Luciano Leilua coming back from that little off-field drama that he had has given them a big boost in the forwards. Jason Taumalolo's fit and firing. Yep. So I really like the Cowboys heading into the back end of the year.
Are we still in the same year that you predicted Drinkwater for Dally M?
Correct, yeah. I don't think that's going to happen now. Obviously, they started the season slow and he missed 2 or 3 games due to suspension. So I don't think that's happening, but in terms of the Cowboys, I like them.
Okay. That's it. I mean, if it's going to be 1 year, it could be this year with, as you said, how condensed the top 6 is. So I'd like to see it happen. I'm partial to the Cowboys. All right, deep breaths for everybody. Ben Hunt saga continues. As we well know, you sat down with Jack Bird, Tyrell Sloan from the Dragons on Friday for our most recent edition of Ebbs and Flows. What kind of vibe did you get about the Dragons in general, just for the playing group?
They seem like they're a tight-knit group across the board. Benny is, I guess, the one outlier that he plays Origin, and he's a lot more senior than a lot of the guys, and he's seen and done a lot more in the game. But I think that the general squad, they seem pretty tight-knit. They're positive about the future, but obviously things at the moment aren't going their way. But I think the guys that are there, especially guys like Tyrell, Bud Sullivan, Junior Amone, they're all, they all really want the club to succeed. So there's positives there, but Thursday night against the Sharks certainly wasn't one of them.
I'm glad, obviously, but I was surprised they did show up on Friday. Less than, wasn't even 18 hours after that pasting. So that was a really tough performance to watch for you, not for me. It was great for me to watch. With the Zach Lomax rumours, how do you feel there? I mean, they can't be avoided. He's a big name player on good coin, but surely you'd think they'd have some type of destabilising influence on the Dragons at the moment.
Yeah, the rumours kind of came out and were debunked about Zach Lomax within the space of 2 hours on Saturday night. I know that could just be a front from Shane Flanagan in public. He hasn't taken over yet as head coach, and Zach is signed for another few years on big coin. So it might be a discussion that they have. But for now, I think it was smart of Flano to come out, silence the noise. But it just adds so much fuel to the fire that it's an unhappy camp. You got Ben Hunt asking for a release, and he's the captain of the club. So it's not a great look when the rumours do keep coming out. Whether there's truth to all of them or some of them, we don't really know. Unless you're inside the four walls, you're not going to know exactly what's going on. But it doesn't help the image of the club when, it seems like on a weekly basis there's a new drama and a new club statement from the Dragons.
So I guess the main reason we are talking about the Dragons today is there was a story by Paul Crawley saying that Ben Hunt cannot continue as captain. Hunt said pretty recently that he'll, as long as the boys want him to be the captain, he's still going to put in, and he's happy to remain in that role. But for you, a Dragons fan and someone who probably understands maybe a little bit of the intricacies of what's going on more than most, is it a bit real or ridiculous that Ben Hunt remains the Dragons captain right now?
I think it looks pretty ridiculous, that he's in charge of the on-field performance. He's the captain of the club. He's the spokesperson of the club. He's the one fronting the media post-game. But there's just this big cloud hanging over his head, and the questions are always going to be there about whether he wants to be at the club, and he's admitted he doesn't want to be. So it's not a great look. I do think it's ridiculous when Tuesday 4 p.m. rolls around and a guy that doesn't want to be at the club has the C next to his name. Where they would go, I'm not sure, because the next best option is just going to cause as much outrage, because Jack de Belin is the most logical in terms of on-field. He's the most logical leader at that club. He's someone that all the players really respect, and he speaks well. He's been around the club for a long time, but he obviously has a bit of a checkered past, and he's not the most beloved guy in rugby league circles. So either way they go, there's going to be people critical of it. But for now, I don't think Ben Hunt is the right person to be captaining the Dragons.
I'm the exact opposite. I don't see a logical replacement for him in any way. And as long as the playing group is fine with it and still can rally around him, which I don't know as an outsider, I have zero idea, but it seems like they still consider him on side. I think he has to be their captain for the rest of the year. I don't think it's a building for next year scenario where you need to get games under your belt. I think that only inflames the situation more than anything.
Yeah, they could.
But that's me.
I guess there is such little time left in the season. They're obviously not going to make the finals. We know that. So if he is still at the club, I can see why they'd want to just settle the noise and keep him in charge, and possibly look at someone like a Jaden Sewer as a long-term captaincy option. But for me personally, I would go with Jack DeBellin and just let Ben Hunt play footy, because he doesn't want to be there, and I don't think someone that doesn't want to be at a club should be the captain.
And then, in a welcome return back to utter thrashings, although I guess the Dragons were still that as well. Woof! Didn't the Bulldogs cop a hammering at the hands of Newcastle, which is probably saying something. No disrespect to Newcastle, but they're not going to be in the top 4 anytime soon. Before the season started, what was your pass mark for the Canterbury Bulldogs?
My pass mark would have been improvement first and foremost, and probably had them penciled in around between 9th and 12th, maybe. That would have been a pass mark, a fair season for me, just because they are building a roster. They're not in that premiership window, so to speak, just yet. So yeah, that would have been a pass mark. I didn't have them in the finals, but I had them closer than where they are now. Yeah,
that clearly hasn't happened. They do seem like, and this is always the answer, people cop a hammering, but they do seem like a side bereft of answers and any real direction, which I find surprising, considering they do have some pretty clearly defined senior members on their roster, and it just hasn't worked out for them. The Gus 5-year plan thing obviously get dragged into. I didn't entirely buy into that too much, especially because a lot of that's from Penrith days where it was more about the club rather than the actual side. But the big thing for me was fans booing them off, and they were hammering them, leaving at half time. The family club's in disarray. Marnie then comes out, says they don't have the right to do that. Obviously, he's now walked back those comments, and it would have been. It was said in the heat of the moment, which, that's fine, it's not the end of the world. But for you, a fan who loves to boo, which I possibly just made up, should fans be able to boo their own players?
I mean, yeah, it's the old saying, you buy a ticket, you can cheer, boo, sing, chant, whatever you want as someone that loves pro wrestling. You see that 4 or 5 nights a week. If you pay a ticket, as long as it doesn't cross a certain line, you have every right to voice your pleasure or your displeasure. And on Sunday afternoon, I think the Bulldogs fans were well within their right to let the players know how they were feeling. The players are feeling just as bad, if not worse, than the fans are. They know how poorly things are going, and they're just as motivated and just as desperate to turn things around as anyone else. So I understand why Reid would have been frustrated, and he said those things similar to a Jack Bird a number of weeks ago. Probably, as Jack's put it on ebbs and flows, probably needs to think a little bit more before he speaks sometimes, and Reid backtracked straight away and apologised. And I don't think there's a massive drama with what he said. He wasn't coming out and saying, these fans are idiots and don't know what they're talking about, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He was just frustrated and upset after a big loss. So, but I think the fans were spot on.
What do you get out of it? I don't have any particularly strong feelings either way, but booing your own players is just because you're just disappointed in them?
I suppose so. It's I don't really know. I can't say I've ever actually done it myself. There's plenty of times I've gone to support the Dragons, and I haven't been very happy with how things are going. But to stand there and boo them when they come off to go in at half time, I don't know. It's just frustration. People do things and have certain reactions when they are frustrated, or they do feel a certain way. So I don't know personally why or what they think it's going to achieve, other than upsetting the players and making them say something back. So I don't know. It's a shitty situation for all of them.
This is true. So looking at this round, which I don't think anyone particularly enjoyed it, is this top 8 for you, apart from maybe 1 or 2 teams, pretty set? Are you happy with where things are at right now? Or do you think someone's going to come from 12th?
Looking outside the 8, I would say the only team outside the 8 currently that will make it is the Cowboys. Who they would come in for that's in the top 8 right now, I don't know. I'd look at someone maybe like the Raiders could possibly drop out. The Warriors I've been impressed with, but they could probably possibly miss out. But the Cowboys would be the one from outside the top 8. I think the Roosters are finished. Manly will find it too hard without Turbo. The Titans are too inconsistent. Dolphins and Knights, I don't think are finals footy teams, and obviously the bottom 3 teams that all got smashed on the weekend are no chance.
All right, so we enter another Origin week. Cannot wait. Will you be watching the Blues next Wednesday night?
Yeah, I would say so. I'll watch it out of sufferance, I suppose, just to see how some of the potential fresh faces in the team go. I'll be excited to see how Keon Kalamatangi and possibly Bradman Best is the talk. See how those 2 guys go. Cody Walker looks like he's back in. I don't know if we want to touch on that. We're waiting for a team announcement, but these things get leaked left, right and centre.
All right, that's it for us for another weekend of footy. We'll see you next week. Outraged as always. See you then.